Ki tae e hi ake ana te atakura he tiu, he huka, he hauhu, ti he Māori. Right, move to apologies. First, I've got an apology for lateness from Councillor Saw, bike incident issue. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Nash, seconded Councillor Gaylor. All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. That's passed, thank you. And I just want to draw your attention to the fact that item number 7, Riverlink Relationship Agreement and Commercial Delivery Agreement, has been withdrawn by the Chief Executive, and that will be considered next week. I also want to move an additional item for the council meeting. So effectively, the publicly excluded business section of the meeting, we are removing the Riverlink Relationship Agreement and Commercial Delivery Agreement, and we are replacing it with a land acquisition opportunity. Two issues are not the same; they're entirely different. So what I'm seeking is a mover and a seconder for the following.
You're moving.
Sorry, I'm moving. I'm looking for a seconder for the following. 1, that Understanding Water 3.55 report PE 25.106 land acquisition opportunity is dealt with at this meeting. 2, this report is not on the agenda for this meeting, as it is at the time the agenda was prepared, officers were still working through the matters relating to this opportunity, though of course many of you have received a briefing on this matter. 3, discussion on matters contained in this report cannot be delayed until the Council's next meeting due to the short time frame in which a decision is required. And 4, this additional report will be dealt with in public excluded business. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Duthie, all those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. That is passed and now on the agenda. In addition, draw your attention to the fact that we previously had a resolution to exclude the public due to the commercial confidence nature of both the Riverlink issue. That is now pulled, and that is replaced by a resolution to exclude the public in relation to the land acquisition opportunity paper. All you need to know at the moment is that what you have as the public exclusive resolution will be replaced with this new one when we get to it prior to the new item 7. You happy, Francis? Yeah, okay, good. Right, so public participation. Avril, come forward.
Conflict of interest.
Oh, sorry. As you're doing that, conflict of interest declarations, councillors? None. Take a seat, Avril. How this plays out is you've got 5 minutes, and then we'll turn to questions from councillors.
Thank you very much.
I will say you might want to lift your chair up. Quentin will help you do that. We have this problem all the time. You end up looking like a Smurf at the end of the thing. Yeah, excellent. We can see you.
Thank you very much for having me. I've got 2 things to deal with today. One is the water entity. Now, this is a really, really big change, and the public's going to get less than a month to have their say on it, which really I don't think is good enough. I know you're constrained by a government timeline, but I think there could have been a call for at least ideas a bit earlier. I've got a couple of things I'd like to put forward. One is I'd like an option where there's a split between ownership and funding and building operation and maintenance. I'd be quite happy for councils to have a very tightly controlled CCO that's little more than a nominee treasury type operation, which does the money side of it, and then they can delegate out the operations to who they like. It's obviously with Wellington Water a pretty contentious issue as to who actually does the work and how they are controlled, and to give us some months to come up with a scheme that we're going to be stuck with is not really good enough. And I'd like plenty of guardrails around the ownership to prevent further privatisation, which has to be on the radar of a national act government. Secondly, with water, I'd like an option around meters. Meters are a massive, huge sink of money for households to put in, which really doesn't do anything. It just tells you whether or not you're using too much. Could we have, please, a target usage And if we can make it, we don't have to have water meters. And in pursuit of that, I'd really like some hints and tips on it. What are we best to do? Put a tank in our backyard, collect water off the roof, flush the toilet with something else? But if we could have a target, at least it gives us a chance to help ourselves before we have to stick up to $300 million into somebody else's pocket over the meters. So that's water. And as I say, I'd like the best of both worlds. We want to be able to borrow along, tidy that up over there. We want to be able to run it in a way that is clearly accountable to the public, which seems to have been a bit of an optional extra in the last thing. This thing is the annual plan. We're getting just on a 10% increase in rates. And there's going to be no notification or consultation, which is convenient, perhaps a bit too convenient. We're looking at our rates doubling over the next 10 years. Inflation accounts for, on your figures, about 20% of it, population at 10%, so where's the rest? Are wages and benefits going to double in this 10 years' time? I don't think so. You're only providing 1.5 times for your own wages. And $200 per annum is still $2,000 over the next 10 years. I've seen my rates double over the last 5 years. They're going to double again over the next 10 years. For most households, they're now already the single biggest non-controllable expense they have. And it's convenient not to do anything, and there may have been little change internally, but there's been a great deal of change externally. Number one on the list is population change. We've only got 520,000 people in this area, which is actually lower than what we had in 2018. Yet the population projections built into the annual plan are 160,000 people. We're never going to make it. That was always the high growth path. And I don't see any process for walking back into the annual budgeting this type of external change. And I really do think the public, again, is being shortchanged by not being given a chance to have a better say on the annual plan, not only for the next coming year, but the years ahead. And I think I'd like budgeting to be a bit more inclusive. The City Council certainly doesn't budget by demographic or location. This one does a bit by location, but I'd like to see some budgeting by demographic too. It might just rule out some items or skew more towards buses or something like that, but we really don't know who benefits from a lot of the public spending. Traditionally, it's been working age males, more so with the City Council and Regional Council. And that really is it. So more chance to consult on the water, more chance to consult on the annual plan, a meter option, different structures beyond what are being proposed for water, and processes within the council to walk back assumptions that are already too large. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Errol. Questions, councillors? Councillor Kirk-Burnett.
Thank you. I heard your comments about water meters, but I must say the areas where they've been installed, like Kapiti, they've been very well received when they're in there. And I find it hard to understand the costs that are there when water costs per household are going to go up by several $1,000s under the changes. So my question is that the costing you're talking about, saying water meters are dear, but in relation to the costs for water that are upcoming, they're low costs and they're beneficial in my view. Can you comment on that, thanks?
Okay, there's two things. One, Kapiti has sandy soils, which makes it harder to detect leaks. They just go straight down. Secondly, there's quicker ways of detecting household leaks and actually sticking in a meter. But I'm not ignoring the fact that we do need to save water. And Kapiti has, to its credit, put in things like new big recycling off roofs and things like that. Can we get, I mean, I'd rather spend my $700 or whatever it is on doing that than on sticking in a water meter, which doesn't make a blind bit of use to how much water I use. So I'm saying give us a chance. We may still come to meters, but at least give us a chance to try and get it down first before we start sucking this extra great lump of household capital out on something which really doesn't do anything. It's lipstick on the pig. I mean, Kapiti had it put in its measures first, may never have needed water meters.
Okay, Councillor Staples.
Thank you, and thanks for coming in, talking to us. It's always good to have intelligent input from our public. Thank you very much. My question is also around water meters, and you're asking for a chance. to see if we can do better.
Yeah.
What do you think has changed that will make people want to do better, whereas they haven't up to now? And I think of electricity. You know, we have meters for electricity, we pay for use. If we took them all out, I can't imagine people are suddenly going to use less electricity. So what do you think has changed that people might want to step up and use less water?
Okay, there's two things. When you threaten people with a large cost, they start to think about alternatives. I mean, the number one reason for putting in solar power in New Zealand is just one finger to the power companies. Wellington City inadvertently has been looking at organic rubbish. Well, it's been looking at organic rubbish, and it asked a question. It turns out nearly 60% of the Wellington community, threatened with the costs of a new tip, are now doing something other than putting it in a rubbish bag. Most of them are composting it, bokashi, some of them are using incinerators, 5% are probably putting it in the public rubbish tins. But at least it's a chance. It doesn't mean we'd get there. I've asked other people, and some have said, oh, well, we don't know how many freeloaders there would be who would do nothing. But, if you've got a suburb-wide target, it might be that enough people put in tanks in their backyard to make it a non-issue. And sooner or later, you have to spend the money on that sort of thing anyway, because Capity, as they did, put in things around recycling water and all the rest of it. So, why not try that first before we go over to meters? Yeah, it's a threat. I mean, you threaten public with a large increase in their rates, and they'll be looking for other things to do with the money.
Okay. Councillors, any further questions at this stage? No, thank you. Thanks for coming in, everyone. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Which does take us to the paper on local water done well, public consultation. Julie? Right, in your hands.
Morena koutou katoa, councillors. For those online or behind us who don't know me, ko Julie Knauff Takawinwa, ko kai whakahaere mātua Ratonga Rangapu, the Group Manager of Corporate Services. So today I'm here to introduce the Local Water Done Well public consultation paper, which outlines our proposed public consultation on the future water services delivery model for our region. The purpose of the paper is to inform Council about the content and approach for the public consultation on the bulk water components of the Local Water Done Well initiative. This consultation is being undertaken in accordance with the Local Government Water Services Preliminary Arrangements Act, very catchy, 2024, which mandates councils to consider and consult on future water services delivery models as part of preparing a broader water services delivery plan that needs to be submitted to the Department of Internal Affairs by the 3rd of September this year. As you'll recall, under the Local Water Done Well policy, councils have been given special consultation provisions requiring only a minimum of two options be consulted on, rather than all reasonably practicable options. They can, of course, consult on more if they choose. The two being one, which would be the status quo, so that's mandatory, with some tweaks as required to meet the new legislative framework. The other option is at council's discretion, but there is some criteria that it needs to meet in order to fit the legislative framework. In terms of previous council decisions, on the 31st of October last year, you agreed to consult on two options, that being the status quo with the necessary changes required to meet new legal requirements, and a new regional asset owning water services council controlled organisation model that is done in partnership with Upper Hutt, Hutt City, Porirua and Wellington City Councils. In terms of recommendations, this paper has two substantive ones. One is the adoption of the consultation document content. You've got an undesigned published version for for reading, and we recommend that you adopt that content for public consultation, but authorise the Chair and the CE to make minor editorial changes prior to publication. We're also seeking your agreement that the proposed public consultation period is from the 20th of March to the 22nd of April. In terms of the consultation approach, the content and timings have been developed collaboratively with the 5 councils who are partnering in this model. We're doing this to ensure as much consistency as possible, both in terms of the content of how we're describing what the model looks like, but also to reduce public confusion as well, because we do have multiple councils essentially engaging on the same thing at the same time. Having said that, we have also had the opportunity to tailor the content as well to fit our water asset and services context, and we've done that where we've needed to in the GW context. I'd also like to note that the approach was developed in partnership with our mana whenua partners who are on the advisory oversight group, along with Councillor Connolly. What we've tried to aim for in the consultation document across the councils is to provide sufficient information, as best we can anyway at this point, for understanding the options while without overwhelming respondents and providing too much complex information, but also ensuring legal compliance in terms of what the Water Services Act requires and our Local Government Act as well. There will also be a set of FAQs that are being prepared that will sit online, which we can update as we go along, but that will provide some of the more detailed types of questions we might get from the public to support that engagement. The consultation document does outline GW's roles in the water services system as both a bulk water supplier and environmental regulator. It talks about the problem with the current state of how water services are delivered in our area, and describes and compares the 2 options that we're consulting on, including some estimates around the cost impacts based on what we know to date. Our consultation document essentially has 2 main questions. The first is common to all of the Wellington Metro Councils that are party to this joint model, and that question is, which option do you believe is the best for delivering reliable drinking water services, essentially the status quo or this joint model? It sets out that the joint model is our preferred model. There is a second bespoke question seeking the views of the public on whether Greater Wellington should remain as an owner or shareholding council in this new joint entity. There's been a topic of discussion amongst you over particularly last year, but into the early parts of this year as well. So we've gone for a question that enables us to gather some insights and intel from our community about how they feel about that in order to inform any future decision that a future council might want to take about that. Consultation will involve a variety of channels, engagement channels to try and reach a broad audience, and the idea being that there'll be multiple platforms for community members to share their views and ask questions, and we've also got content in our annual plan consultation document that cross-references this as well. We've got a media release ready to go as well. I would note that as the local Water Done Well policy and legislative framework is still going through the policy process, there may be some changes that are required post-consultation to the way we describe our model if they've come out with other information that we need to meet or other expectations. And then finally, just to conclude, in terms of the next steps towards taking the big decision, once consultation closes, we will obviously analyse that feedback that we receive, and we'll also be working with the other councils to exchange relevant information if there is information that is gathered in other consultation processes that is relevant to our role or for our consideration, and vice versa. We will be reporting back to council on that towards the end of May, and then this council will consider the big decision on the final delivery model, so not the full water services delivery plan, but the final model on the 26th of June. By that stage, we will have more information around the financial implications and also have advanced further the establishment strategy for the new entity. Other councils will also be doing the same on a similar time frame, so all councils will be taking their decisions in and around the 26th of June, plus or minus a day, depending on council schedules. We'll then continue to work on the full water services delivery plan, which is a much bigger document, and that's the thing that needs to be submitted to DIA on the 3rd of September. Thank you.
Okay, Councillors Connolly and then Staples.
So thank you very much for the work that's gone into this. I know that that actually what you're seeing here is a bit like the iceberg. Like this is a small component of the amount of work that's been done, but that's sitting underneath this. So I appreciate all the work that you guys have done. However, at the moment, I'm not particularly enamoured with where this consultation document is at. And I guess my issues fall into some quite specific things that I'd like to see changed, and then some more general things I'd like to see changed. So can you tell me exactly what bits are joint and what bits are Greater Wellington specific? Because I've been in favour of having a joint consultation document. I thought that we could do one for the whole region and save everyone having to consult multiple times. If that's not possible, I want to know which bits are shared and which bits we have the opportunity to tutu with without affecting the other people.
Thank you, Councillor, through you, Chair. The simple answer is where it refers to Greater Wellington and our functions, that's our part. Everything else is primarily the shared content. So the vast bulk of the document is shared content across us and the TAs.
But it's not on a paragraph by paragraph basis, because most of the paragraphs have some reference to Greater Wellington and then some more generic stuff. So every paragraph has both shared and bespoke content.
To some extent, but wherever it does refer to Greater Wellington, that's us. Anything else that's more generic across the whole system, that's the shared content across all of us.
Okay. So in terms of the Greater Wellington bespoke stuff, I don't think it clearly outlines our position and our risks. It doesn't really refer to the fact that we're at risk of running out of water at all, anywhere in the whole document. It talks about...
Have you got a question?
Well, these are things that I want changed. Where do you want to discuss that?
Can you frame it into a question?
Can you change it along the lines of referencing actually what Greater Wellington's interests are in this and talking about the water shortage issue? It references climate change, but then it talks about flooding. It doesn't talk about the risk of drought, which is the bigger concern from our asset perspective. It doesn't talk about how the leaks connect into the water supply issue, and it doesn't talk about the costs that we would be facing if we were to finance the Pakratahi Lakes all by ourselves. In fact, I wondered if we could split that out. That is a question, by the way. I wondered if we could split that out as a wee box saying Pakratahi Lakes. If we were going to do the current model, this is how we would have to finance it and what that would look like for Greater Wellington, essentially unaffordable, versus funding it under the current proposed model.
Can we stop there? You're asking for a sort of vignette type thing that gives a compare
Case study.
Yeah.
What potential is there to do something like that in relation to the Pakratahi Lakes or any other major asset?
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the question that you asked, which was the what's the potential for adding information into that, we will go and have a look at what can be done, and particularly to strengthen some of those messages that Councillor Connolly has requested. In terms of like an extra text box, that's one option. We can also incorporate, if that wasn't for whatever reason, in talking with the other council partners, if that wasn't an option, then we also have the option of providing more specific content on our website and FAQ and landing page, where we can talk about some of that as well. So yes, I will go away and have a look at what can be done.
Yeah. And before you do that, just a question then. If we continue to particularise this document to make it more particular to us and what have you, what benefit are we going to get? What benefit is the consumer, the person who's looking at this document versus the Upper Hutt document or the Wellington document, going to actually get from that? Clearer understanding of what we do, or is it going to shape their decision making in relation to?
Well, I guess this is why this whole thing is very odd, because really it's one decision across the whole region. But if we are referencing Greater Wellington, we want to highlight for us what the issues are in particular. And I mean, the problem is that the obvious other solution for us would be setting up our own bulk water supplier, which we haven't gone down the route of. But we need to highlight essentially what's wrong with the current model from our perspective if we're not doing a joint document. So I think the current document sort of falls between the cracks of being shared but somewhat bespoke, so that people are required to submit on 2 documents. And if they're required to submit on 2 documents, we may as well use the opportunity to enlighten people about exactly what our risks and involvement in the situation is.
So can you just take a note of any changes, and then we'll play those back at the end of this session?
I've got more.
Okay. Can I come back to you in a second, Ros, and can I go to Councillor Staples?
Thank you. My question is around the consultation time, because I have to admit that when I read the paper and I looked at the month, I did feel that was quite a short time in sympathy with our public participant today. I totally appreciate that we have time restrictions. So is that the same time as all the other councils? So if we changed it, we'll be out of sync?
Through you, Chair. Yes. So we have quite a detailed program plan that we've worked on with other councils, and that has mapped back from 3rd of September when the drop dead date is. And we have looked at what is the work that needs to be done in terms of all the modelling to meet the requirements to fill the full water services delivery plan, which needs a model to be locked in place with enough time. But we've also got the local body elections falling in the middle of it, so that has also further truncated our decision-making time to a certain degree. So we have basically stretched everything as much as we can, and because of the sequence of decisions that are required by councils over the next couple of months, this is what's primarily dictated the timeframes that we've ended up with. I would note that the legislative framework does allow for councils to make an application closer to September about seeking an extension should they wish, so there is a lever that can be pulled. But the instruction that officers have had to date has been go hard for making that 3rd of September deadline, and that's what we've been working to.
Thanks, Julie. Following on from that, are you confident that we've got enough umpa in our public consultation to make sure the public know about this and we catch their attention and they get involved? Because sometimes in our consultation, although I think we do a reasonably good job, you say to people, "Oh, do you know about our LTP?" No. So, this is probably one of the most important things that the public have in front of them for a long time.
Through you, Chair. I'm not sure if the question was there, but I'll assume your question is how are we going to make sure that people are going to see it? So we've got we're working on a visual campaign at the moment that will go out through all our social media channels and online. We've got scripts for radio ads that is specifically on just the water consultation. So that was one of the considerations when we were talking last year about whether to fold this in as part of our annual plan consultation or go it alone. One of the upsides of going alone is that we can do a bespoke campaign around this, and that has been an active part of the joint communications approach as well, working with the other councils to ensure that it's all over everywhere, and hopefully that with each council going out at the same time, then we will saturate that message through various council channels, and we've also all agreed to share links between each other's consultation documents as well, so there's kind of a no wrong door type thing in terms of where ratepayers might see that information and be able to participate and engage.
Okay, so I've got Councillor Nash, Councillor Duthie, Councillor Laban, Councillor Kirkburnand, Councillor Bassett, and then Councillor Connolly.
Kia ora, Chair. Kia ora, everyone. Thanks for the work. So, a question on the customer charter. So that's in para 29 of the report. And has there been any more detailed work on that other than this paragraph, or is this paragraph basically the sum total of agreed content across the shareholding councils that are looking to participate in this new entity?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Nash. Yes, it is part of the establishment strategy, so we haven't gone very far, apart from to say that that is our expectation. We've had a couple of councillor and CE workshops that have been looking at what the establishment strategy is for a new entity, so that we can, basically we're not waiting around to find out all the last little details from DIA before fleshing out what kinds of things might need to be in it. So there have been discussions, but not huge amounts of detail about what the customer charter would include. That will be absolutely part of the next stage of the planning for this.
And do we know if other councils around the country looking at water entity establishment are also thinking about customer charters? In the same way.
From my recollection, some are and some aren't. Some of them, there's not a lot that we know of yet that are looking at establishing brand new entities. There's quite a lot of in-house or tweaks to in-house models. So that'll certainly be something that we keep an eye out for.
Thank you. Next question is about the remaining and owner bit in the consultation document, and I just wondered whether that we can make some changes to that bit. Presumably, that's kind of our bit, rather than the other councils having that exact same paragraph. Is that right?
Correct.
So one thing we could do here is it talks about the costs of cost to ratepayers, but I wondered, would it be possible to, if that paragraph is going in, to also talk about the benefits of staying in? Because if we're talking about costs, we should also balance that with benefits. And I wondered whether it didn't seem, I wondered whether we could have a discussion at some point about, well, probably today, probably now, about whether it is slanted a little bit towards leaving and characterises our position as councillors as being pro-leaving rather than more balanced potentially. So that was one thing.
I think we should delete that paragraph altogether.
And then my last question is more about the costs. So there's some debt headroom tables in the consultation document, the draft consultation document, and I wondered whether the financial model behind this, you see where it says actual 23-24 bulk water costs and the revenue line, it kind of goes up over the 4 years there. Is that from a shared financial model with the other shareholding councils?
Yes, so the financial model that we've all had to put in has included GW specific and other TA specific information, and then they're rolling those up to say what it would be in order to compare costs.
So the ratio of increases across those 4 financial years, is that the same for Greater Wellington and bulk water as it is for, broadly speaking, the TAs in terms of their other water assets?
At this point, I'm going to look to my colleague Ellie, who's been involved more in the financial modelling aspects.
Kia ora koutou. Sorry, so you can hear me better. I just need a clarification. So you're talking about the cost of the assets or the operating cost?
Well, I'm looking at the revenue line in the table on page 15 of the consultation document, page 30 of diligent, and actual 23-24 for bulk water, it says 56 million, and then budgeted 70 million for 24-25, and then 78 for 25-26, and 83. So I'm just wondering whether those increases are, obviously some are real, but some are forecast, budgeted, and I'm just wondering whether the ratios are similar to the TAs with their water revenue line.
Kind of comparing apples and oranges here, because we've put all the information in together and consolidated it to produce. It is based more or less on our LTPs with some adjustments, particularly for us for the annual plan. So generally, given the costs are coming from Wellington Water overall, it is similar, but obviously there are increased maintenance costs driving revenue requirements in particular TAs, like water maintenance costs in Wellington City. We would have to get the numbers out for you to
consultation documents.
Yeah,
give you that comparison.
Because I guess to cut to the chase, what I'm thinking is, if you looked at all 5 of the consultation documents and looked at these revenue lines across all the tables, could you basically work out what we're expecting the revenue line to be overall for water services in the region, and therefore figure out extrapolate that to what your average bill is going to be for a consumer?
Oh, I see what you're asking. Sorry.
This
So
is the
there is
revenue
work
line, right?
being done on what the average cost will look like by authority, but there is some additional work being done on that at the moment because there was a requirement that we needed to go back and revisit. So when we come back to you in June, there'll be more accurate numbers about how that plays out into what ratepayers or water users will get in each territory.
Okay.
At the moment, we weren't happy with the way that those numbers played out, so we actually took them out of the paper.
But are they in other shareholding councils' papers?
But they are in other documents
Yeah,
that
yeah,
have been
they are.
shared with
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Oh no, I realise that, which is why I'm wondering why they're not in the public consultation document for full transparency. If they're already in documents that have been shared, that's going to be a big question for people, I think. My last question was going to be about the frequently asked questions, but where it talks about will I be paying more, and I commend us for being open about yes. The answer there is yes under any system, and so I guess I'm thinking. I feel like that'll be a big focus for the public. What does this mean for my bills?
I can comment a little bit on that because I think it is really hard to compare the current situation to what the new entity might be like, because essentially what the situation for the current entity looks at is what we've put in our LTPs. So that is, in terms of our expenditure, that is the figure that we've used for what we might be spending into the future. Yeah. But that figure reflects the fact that councils don't have any money. Yeah. So then when you look at the new entity is not necessarily going to be bound by what assets are proposed to be spent on in the LTPs. So they'll be looking at a whole raft of different expenditure structures. Yeah. So, and also the current figures are based on the income from the LTPs, so exactly. Rates, whereas the new entity is not going to be constrained by rates. They're going to be charging a bill. So we're trying to compare things that aren't really comparable, and also trying to look into the future to how the organisation might manage itself once it's free. Yes. So it's very difficult to...
Which is why I think we need to think carefully about how to communicate that. And just one small thing, just to chuck it in while we're going, is I did think one other question, would it be possible to have another question in here in the FAQ? Just what's the difference between this, what are the main differences between this proposed model and the model proposed under the previous water reform arrangements? Because there's a lot of similarities and there were a lot of concerns about that last proposed arrangement. And so I just want to make sure we're saying, okay, what are the key differences here? So thanks.
Just on the financial question, which was a question which was answered in part by Ros and Ali as well, I think that is the answer as to why there's not that detailed information, because actually while there'll be a huge amount of public interest in that very question, and all entities who are about to consult absolutely understand that, it is also currently, because of some of the things outlined, not necessarily the constructive way to engage, because if figures go out there and they become gospel, they won't actually be gospel because of the complexity, and that is what people will focus on rather than the fundamental question about do you or do you not support the proposal to basically reform the water system. That information will come, as Ali said, when you come to your next decision-making steps. That will be far clearer for everybody, not just us, but all the entities. So it's a very live question. It's very well understood. But where we're at the moment, that's not quite the purpose of why we have to consult at this phase of the process. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Duthie, then Councillor Labour.
Thank you. I have a few questions. I'll just start with a couple. In our October meeting on this topic, we passed a resolution agrees that the Chair's request asks the AOG to explore the need for a charter or similar mechanism to consider elements such as protecting and communicating the rights of local water users, safeguarding the environment, considering living wage and ethical procurement under a new entity, etc., etc., etc. There's no mention of that in this paper. What's the progress on that specific area, please?
Through you, Chair. So that's the work that's been done as part of the establishment strategy. So there have been a couple of workshops, particularly with officers and CEs around all the different things that might need to be ready for day one. The most recent workshop we had was about a month ago here in Greater Wellington. So we have been focusing on what are the critical components that you would need for day one. How soon do you need that? Do you need that right from the before establishment? And our conclusion was yes. We talked about what some of the what sorts of things it should cover, but we haven't got to the point of having a full draft or anything, but that would be coming this year and as part of our establishment work.
Thank you. Second unrelated question. This is paragraph 28 on page 10. So one of the implications of this change in how our bulk water responsibilities is managed is a separation of our management of the water collection land and the bulk water assets, and that's described in paragraph 28 C and D. I'm particularly interested in, there's a wee bit of overlap between the two in the sense that, for example, right now there's a 1080 operation being planned for the water collection area in Wainuiamata. Now that's partly for biodiversity purposes and it's partly for water collection area, water quality purposes. So with that separation in this model, who funds and plans those sorts of things? And the other aspect would be access to that area, because that area is out of bounds to the public for water collection or water protection purposes. Would that be the new company's responsibility, or is that Greater Wellington's as the land manager, or have we not worked that out yet?
Through you, Chair. Yes, you're absolutely right. That's one of the work streams in the implementation plan, is to look at the transitional arrangements and the agreements that need to be put in place. And that one absolutely is on our radar. So currently, Wellington Water manage that on our behalf because they also use it for ensuring things like rats and mice don't chew important cables as well and damage plant and equipment. Access to those water catchment areas will also be an important part of the implementation plan around the transitional arrangements, and particularly around we're talking about the need for a sort of an agreement that would be between shareholding councils and the entity around what the expectations are in terms of things like that. So very much on our radar, definitely going to be part of the implementation plan. Those examples are specific ones that we have put in there as things that will need to be worked through.
Thank you. I have more, but I wonder if you want to keep it circulating.
We'll add you to the list under Councillor Connolly. So Councillor Laban.
Thanks, Chair. In light of the current drama surrounding Wellington Water, I suspect that the question posed on page 26, should we stay as an owner, under the current climate, would probably come back as an overwhelming no. And that will have some political implications. There will some suggest that we have regional council are rats deserting the sinking ship. The question itself is controversial and leading. You could argue. So my question is, if we don't become an owner, what are the implications for us?
If you don't become an owner, I mean, at this point in time, we're in, regardless, because we've got the assets and we would need to be engaged at least to the point of establishment. But if you're talking about a point in time after that, the implications of not being involved, so on the benefit side, a clearer separation of roles, being the environmental regulator and consent issuer and holder in the same breath, through our dual role as supplier and environmental regulator. So that's one of the upsides of being removed from the role. But it does give council less skin in the game in terms of helping this organisation be set up for success and learning from the mistakes of the past and learning from how we currently collectively work together with Wellington Water. So that is the downside. If we weren't involved, then we have less of a say in that. That could also be something that is desirable, to leave territorial authorities to essentially do that for this region, which would be similar to other parts of the country where the only regional council, as you know, who actually has a role in bulk water supply. It would normally be a TA function.
Is the question really necessary?
Sorry,
I'm
Sam.
just worried about the implications of the answer if we don't like it.
So I think the answer to that question is that we don't need to ask the question. We can withdraw ourselves from the arrangement without the question. But did we want to get a sense of how the community felt about this? So that irrespective of what the public responds to that question, we can still make the decision to either exit or stay. We're not bound by the response we get, but clearly I think what you might be saying, Councillor Laban, is we walk into a bit of a problem if the community says, well, they want you to stay in, but we've come to a conclusion that it would be better to remove ourselves from this line of trade, if you like.
So to a certain degree, the question will provide the response from the public. It means we can do it at the same time we're actually consulting on the primary proposition around water reform. We are unique, as we all know, and Julie just said, we are the only regional council involved in this narrative at all. So it's a unique question bespoke to this region. The other thing we thought there was benefit in having this, if we don't ask this question now, we will have to go back and ask it again at some other point in the process. So it gives this council some information. It will allow for an incoming council to have some information as well. We thought that is not unuseful. It's not binding. It's the other key thing. This is part of a consultation package. You come through in multiple different decision-making gates in the next few months leading up to September. It's in some part trying to respond to the fact that we are bespoke and some of the questions that you've already raised around the table around our function and role and how the public might perceive that. So that's the reason why it's there. You could take it out, but I think to a certain degree we get less rich information for future decision making for this organisation going into the next phases of this process.
All good, Councillor Lamb? Councillor Kirkbernand, Councillor Bassett, then back to Councillor Connolly and back to Councillor Duthie.
Thank you. My questions come in two areas. The first is in the key points area, where towards the bottom of that we talk about not having a significant impact on Greater Wellington rates. Now, my concern in that is that we're actually consulting on the impact on our residents, not just on our matter of rates. And so the statement is true, but it's completely misleading because we should be pointing out to people that there are going to be increased water costs to them. And so I think that we need to do that. And this is in line with the comments that Thomas was saying. And further, when we come to the rating impact, we should be putting in there some discussion about the cost per household in the future. What we've done in this paper is we're saying, oh, well, Greater Wellington can spend more on the environment because we'll have less in water costs. That's true. But for the ratepayer, they're facing significant costs. And in the rating impact...
you got a question?
Yeah. I'm asking why these things aren't in there. This is my question. And for the rating impact, when we talk about cost per household, we should have something in there saying that across the region, the current cost of water per household is X, Y, or Z, and under the new entity, the cost is likely to be, and point out the difference relates to just fixing the leaks or fixing the pipes or something that spells out to the public what they're facing. They won't like it, but it's wrong of us to mislead people and just say, oh, it's just about our Greater Wellington rates and that. And so in regard to those two issues and that, I'd like to see something that brings in greater clarity. I don't accept Roz's point that there's no understanding of the cost.
Now, hang on a sec. I think you're getting into debate here. Can you see if you can extract a response, Julie?
I can.
Can you
Chair.
magic up a response?
I can magic up a response before I pass to Ellie to potentially elaborate on some more rating information. There are elements of the consultation document that have been prescribed to us by government, and the rates impact is one of those things. So that is why there is a explicit discussion on the rating impact. That is more significant for other TAs than it is for us because of how we structure our funding through the bulk water levy. But I'll let Ali elaborate on that. In terms of the costs, that is one of our biggest challenges in this piece of work, has been getting to reasonable and robust information that we can put out in the public domain to inform this in terms of what the potential costs would be, because there are so many variables around levels of investment. And so there's a very large work stream going on at the moment in this piece of work to exactly look at what those costs are and to be in a position to be able to actually put those out there to say, well, this is what we think the investment needs to be for the future of Wellington, and this is what it would cost, and this is what it would mean down to an individual household level. It is under active work, which is going as rapidly as it possibly can, and ideally we would have more time to be able to put all of that information into the consultation document, and that hasn't been possible.
So just to clarify what I'm asking, in our paper, technically it says, so we're going to save 1.1 million in rates for you people, okay, for the ratepayers. And Wellington City Council could say that we're going to save 400 million, and the other council could say the same. What I'm asking here is that we point out that the future costs to ratepayers are going to increase compared to what it currently costs them for water. And I want to see visibility in that sort of thing. I think it's wrong and misleading not to be clear about that. I believe we have the capacity because we've already had some of those numbers there. So the point you made, Julie, was that the government's saying we must say what it means for rates on us. But I'm saying, what does it mean for the total rate cost for the people we represent here, the public? That's what we're looking at here. And that's missing from this paper, in my view. Thank you. And I'd like to see it included. Thank you.
So it's just a quick response on that one. So the rating impacts for each of the councils will be in their consultation documents. And so that will be in there for those ones. Ali, did you want to add anything further about the rating information?
Through you, Chair. I'm sure, Chris, we could add a sentence without being, or a paragraph without being in consultation with our colleagues at the other TAs. But the consultation documents are designed to be read together. So we have left for the rates impact or the cost impact to particular TAs to be presented in their consultation documents, just as Julie has just said. We just presented it from our perspective.
I think it's all a bit complicated, Chris, by the fact that, as you know, we have a levy arrangement to the TAs, and so we're not actually rating our ratepayers directly other than the cost of the transition. Optically it will be a little bit difficult, even with the documents side by side. You actually do have to have them side by side to actually understand everything that's going on.
Understand that, but I'm saying that I'm here as a councillor representing the interests of the ratepayers, and I want to see the rating impact reflecting what happens to them, and that doesn't do that in this paper. And when you reflect to them, it should reflect the impact per household, because that's what they'll understand. And, sure, make it sweet by commenting on the fact that we're going from just fixing leaks to fixing the pipes or whatever it is. We should put the positive moves on it and point out if we didn't do this, it will cost them a damn sight more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bassett, Councillor Connolly, then Councillor Duffy.
I had, look, first of all, thank you very much for the paper. I thought it was really good, very, very good. I think well done, a lot of work in it. I had two questions. One was about finance, and I think it's been saturated, that particular subject, and I do think it's quite important that we do indicate, I guess, what the potential for the future for the financing of these of the entity. But the other question that I had was back in December, we had a letter from the Minister of Local Government when he introduced the Water Services Bill, talking about the need for efficiencies. and he had a particular focus on size, economies of scale, which would obviously bring in efficiencies. And I wondered whether, with the decisions that have been made to have 3 new organisations within the Wellington region, has there been any criteria, has there been any suggestions, has there been any discussions with government about our proposal in any way?
Yes, there has been discussion. So the regional project team, who are working across all our councils to coordinate our involvement, have been engaging regularly with the Department of Internal Affairs to ensure that we are heading in the right direction, that we are aligned. So we have regular meetings with the team that are working in DIA on this water reform package, and to test particularly that scale and efficiency question. We're doing that for the Wellington Metro Councils plus GW, so for our joint model, and for others in the region, so the Wairarapa Councils, and for Kapiti, Horowhenua, Otaki, then they would probably be doing similar sorts of things. Certainly they were last year when we were all working together, so I presume that they would keep going with that, because we don't want to get to September to find that we're miles apart, but the assurances we've been given to the best that they can, given the legislation still working its way through the process, is that we're heading in the right direction. This is what they would be expecting to see.
Okay, Councillor Connolly.
Okay, I've got 2 quickies and one more substantive one, so I'll do my quickies first. For the table, which is in the paper and then replicated in the consultation document, can we add another line, which is prioritisation of projects? So I think one of the key things that this new entity, we could say, under the current model, the prioritisation of projects is decided on an individual council, so therefore not looking at a network basis. And we could even point out that this means none of the councils have been prepared to fund IT or asset management systems. Under the new entity, prioritisation is decided by the entity itself, including determining what it needs as its sort of set up and infrastructure, including IT systems. And my other quickie is where it talks about involvement of iwi. I just don't agree that the new model actually does provide a better. It talks about how iwi is going to be involved at all levels of the organisation. Well, actually, the legislation has specifically prohibited iwi from being shareholders in this organisation. So anything else is just at the whim of councils. So I just don't agree that the new structure actually does provide a better involvement for iwi, and in fact the current structure, arguably where we've got iwi locked into the committee, might provide better input for iwi. So those are my 2 quickies.
Sorry, can I just stop there? I think if I can just pick that up, Ros, that's one of the things where you've been asked to characterise the difference between the 3 waters approach and this approach, where I think you will have to lean in on that issue. Because if I remember correctly, 3 waters was a lot more inclusive of iwi as it went forward than this approach is. So
it's not what our document says. Our new document says
but
iwi will be represented at all levels of the new entity governance.
Correct. So I think you're going to have to temper the approach that you've got in there, but you'll also need to compare and contrast. The iwi stuff will need to be in there as well. So that, okay, cool. Sorry.
My last one is this discussion over the should Greater Wellington continue to be involved in water. Now, I'm very much of the opinion that we should remove this paragraph altogether. I think even if this council was vehemently supportive of us getting out, this is not the right time to ask that question. So this question is about what should the new model look like, and it just really muddies the water having this question in here. And the fact that our councillors don't understand the implications of us getting out, what possible hope do we have that the public will understand the implications of us exiting? I mean, at the moment, through the water talks and through the transition to the new entity, Greater Wellington has been a key player in holding this whole thing together. We've been driving a lot of the direction and a lot of the actions, and essentially we're saying now, we're going to leave it to the other guys. I just don't think this is the right time to be asking this question, and I think I just think it's the wrong time. There's not enough information in here anyway. It doesn't put the pros and cons, and it's just going to confuse people when this is not the main question that we've got on the table at the moment. And also, we don't have a position on it. We explicitly determined not to have a position the last time.
I think that issue, Councillor Connolly, is probably fundamental enough to actually propose a recommendation to remove that, if that's what you want to do, and then we can have that as part of our debate, if you want to think about that. Councillor Duthie.
Thank you. So my next question is quite a simple one. Page 25 of diligence. This is page 10 of the attachment. There's a statement there that Greater Wellington intends to retain ownership of the area and parkland to ensure we retain public recreational access. Now that doesn't seem to be correct, because right now there's no public recreational access in some parts. So I think what we mean there is to ensure we retain management of public recreational access. We can't retain access if currently there is no access. So I think that's a miswritten. You get my point?
I will go and
take it offline?
Yep, I will go and have a look to make sure that it is technically and as accurate as it needs to be. The essence of what we're trying to say there is that while assets would transfer, water assets, so treatment plants, for example, that might be in a water catchment area where we might have recreational trails, that the plant itself would transfer, but not the land it sits on, not the area around it, not if there's shared access roads, for example, that they wouldn't be removed, the ability to go there like you can currently for Timarua. So that's the intent of it, but we can go and have another look, make sure that it isn't, that it is saying what it needs to say.
You could just add in where it is available. We retain public recreational access where it is available.
Something like that, yeah. So my next question relates to the revenue to debt ratio tables on page 30 of diligent, page 15 of the attachment. What that table shows, what our text says is that we have high debt to revenue ratio with our bulk water assets, and by removing that from our balance sheet, we have greater ability to borrow for other activities. But what this table actually also shows is we're only currently overall borrowing up to 163, etc., 160, so well below our headroom. So it doesn't actually establish that removing bulk water from our operations, from our balance sheet, would materially make any difference to our ability, nor does it actually establish that we don't have sufficient headroom to borrow for the capital investment required in bulk water. And I think that's the narrative, that's what we're trying to say, but I don't think... So I guess one question is, if we were to retain bulk water and we wanted to build new lakes, do we have the headroom to build those lakes? And if we don't, why aren't we sort of saying that?
A couple of parts to that question. So let's start with the headroom understanding. So the headroom is in relation to the revenue, and it is the removal of the revenue and the debt that makes that difference. So that's why it improves the debt headroom for us at the moment on current calculations of about 100 million. It's because we have currently well exceeded the 280% debt headroom on the water revenue. So it's not related to how much debt headroom is actually physically left for Greater Wellington. In regards to the lakes, given what I currently know, which is it's not currently budgeted, but that if it was going to cost $1 billion, we do not have enough headroom at the end of the 10 years to do that based on current budgeted spending for both water and our other activities. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, and I think that's the fundamental reason why we have ruled out the we could do bulk water in-house sort of option because we simply couldn't afford to do this capital investment. I just wonder why we don't make that clear. So, because I guess the aspect to it is there are quite a lot of people out there who think we're quite good and we do quite a good job and we've looked after our capital assets in bulk water. We're not the problem here. And so why don't we just carry on being good and looking after them? And that is the fundamental reason why we can't long term, along with the fact that it actually works more efficiently as an integrated management. But I just feel like that's not coming through, and we'll end up getting submissions from people saying, well, just keep doing bulk water, please.
So if I can, Councillor Duthie, I think that might be the reason why Councillor Connolly has suggested that sort of vignette thing that says, well, this is what you get in the current arrangement. Give the example of Pakuratahi Lake. This is what you get under the new arrangement. Give the example of Pakuratahi Lakes. So that might be the two of you may want to play into that conversation about how that's drafted, but that seems to me to be a good way to try and surface this issue for the public.
But thank you, Ali. That clarified my question aspect of it. I think I'll leave it there, actually.
Okay.
If I could just add to this part of the conversation, and I know you're about to go into debate. There's been some really good feedback through this, which is fantastic, and I think how we shape a consultation document and stay true to the agreement we have with the other councils, and there's been a lot of work obviously to get to this point to try and make it as consistent, as clear as possible, and then how we translate that into more specificity for either the document under the minor editorial changes that you delegated to Darren and I, or the ability to actually have a Q&A and referenced material in our own consultation document through the website. I think there's a point there. I think there's probably so much we can go back successfully to the TAs and keep the integrity of what's trying to be prepared here. But certainly our work and how you want to represent that can be done through our own channels, and that will be linked to everything in the documentation material. So just something to help frame when we go into the debate, because I don't want to put the team or this process under a point of pressure where we end up redebating, if we don't need to, issues in the consultation document.
Okay, two questions from me. First question relates to page 21 of diligent, page 6 of the paper for consultation. It says at the end of paragraph 3rd from the top, while Kapiti District is also exploring options with other councils and local mana whenua. I wonder whether in the last 48 hours that is still true and whether that needs to be amended. I don't know where the truth lies on any of these things at the moment. It's a bit of a moving feast, but I had understood that Kapiti might be looking to now go in-house and not have a relationship with the Horowhenua District Council. My second question is in paragraph 30 of the report, on page 11 of Diligent, talks about financial modelling that's been undertaken in relation to the two options, etc. So, can you just tell us when this document goes out for public consultation, what other documentation will the public be able to access to get underneath the hood of the stuff that you've got in this paper?
So we've currently got all of the material that was out publicly last year, which had some of the higher level modelling, but that was when we were doing it as part of a collective of 10 councils. So we will have our consultation document, the FAQs, the links to all the legislation and the acts and the information that DIA has prepared, which is quite extensive in terms of information for the public and councils around their expectations in terms of the framework. I don't believe that we're going to be producing any modelling content for the consultation because of the fact that it's still a work in progress and extremely detailed and complex to generate. So it is at the moment aimed at higher level of information than more detailed information in order for people to engage, because you very quickly disappear down a rabbit hole of complexity, particularly when you're trying to merge the different councils' asset information and services, because every council is slightly different. And so depending on whether you're a ratepayer in one part of in Porirua versus in Upper Hutt, it might well be quite a different story. So most of that would be surfaced in the other councils' consultation documents.
So just a supplementary to that, if I'm looking at the Wellington City Council consultation information, will that take me to a pātaka or a storehouse of information about their stuff, or will everybody's be in one? How much work are people who want to make submissions here going to have to go to surface the stuff that is going to inform them?
Sure. So what we've tried to do with working with the other councils is to ensure that from a community member, regardless of where you live, point of view, that there is no wrong door on water consultation. So if you submit to Wellington City Council, but you're actually talking about bulk water, then they will provide that information to us with appropriate privacy provisions around that. So we have all agreed that we will share relevant content across councils in keeping with Privacy Act considerations. Where there is information gathered in another TA's consultation that is pertinent to another one of the partner councils, to make sure that we don't miss out on that information. So it's not going to be dependent on the person submitting to get the right portal, for example. We all have our own landing pages, but the landing pages has been developed together, so we've got consistency of what's in that material. We're also trying to keep the consultation documents looking similar as well, as much as possible, again, to try and create a familiar vibe to help reduce confusion and ensure that there's sort of a consistency level of information. Within those landing pages, we will also be linking to other TAs' consultation documents in the Wellington metro area and vice versa. So, and they're in places, if it's relevant, there will be jumping off points within the document if needed, so that people can go and look at that specific council's consultation material or specific information as it pertains to ratepayers in those particular areas. So we're aiming to remove that as a barrier as much as possible.
Okay, cool, thank you. Now, conscious that this is a big decision, so any councillors who haven't asked questions, now's your opportunity. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this?
I'd like to move it, but with the added action that we remove the paragraph and references to should Greater Wellington remain an owner of the new water.
Okay, so can you construct a note on that?
And plus all the other myriad of not entirely minor changes that we've put
minor
today.
or non-minor.
So I think we can probably take those additions and changes as read. Do you want clarification about, do you want Julie to step through a list of those things, or are you comfortable that we've sort of got that captured?
I'm comfortable, and I'm quite happy to work with Quentin and Julie and Ellie on how we can present the Pakratahi story a bit more convincingly, because I think that is quite important.
So we have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Conley.
Oh, this is a big day. I'm very excited that we've got to this point. As the document points out, water is a network, and it is grown in Upper Hutt, but used in Wellington and then disposed of potentially over in Porirua. And we need to work together as a network to optimise what we do. And the current system where the councils will own their assets and make individual decisions based on those assets is just not working for Wellington. So I'm really happy to put this discussion document out. And I think, if anything, it's a really complicated issue, and I just hope people can get to grips with the nub of the issue. And I do reflect on the conversations we've had around the rates component or the new cost of what it's going to hit consumers in their back pocket. And I think we can't shy away from the fact that whatever option we choose moving forward, it is going to cost consumers more. And this new model will not be cheap, but hopefully it will empower the organisation to address the concerns that we have, the concerns that 40 to 50% of our water is running into the streets, that 7 out of 8 of our wastewater treatment plants are typically non-compliant. That when it rains, heavy rain, we put untreated wastewater into our rivers and harbours, which is just unacceptable. So these are things we know we need to get on top of, and we've tried under the current model and we've failed. So this is a new approach, a new dawn, and hopefully it will deliver for the people of Wellington.
Okay, Councillor Staples.
Yes, thank you. I would like to follow on from Councillor Connolly, and I'd like to thank the team for all the work that's gone into this. It is a very gnarly problem. Councillors have been able to access an enormous amount of information over several months. So it is going to be difficult, I believe, for even very intelligent members of the public to get their head around this. And it's going to be up to councillors in conversation to help. I guess the old model, and for someone like me who's been around local government for a while, we've been crying out that it was not sufficient to fund what was necessary for our infrastructure, especially under pressure from successive governments, whatever their colours, to keep rates low. Don't put your rates up. And yet investment in large infrastructure needs more than the status quo. So while this is not going to be cheaper for the person in the street, hopefully whatever model we end up with, because this is a consultation document and there is still room for manoeuvring and for changing, whatever we end up with will deliver a system that will work now and well into the future for the major part of metropolitan Wellington area. So thank you for all the work that's gone into this, but we're not over the speed hump yet.
Councillor Duthie. Councillor Nash.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to add one element. I must admit, when I read the context of this this process about how we have underinvested in Three Waters and all these problems and so on, I wince a little bit, because from what I've learnt at Greater Wellington, I've actually been quite impressed at how this council has not underinvested. It has actually taken its responsibilities with bulk water seriously over many years. And this is not self-congratulating myself, because most of these capital projects were approved before my time here. We have issues with funding them, and we have issues with ageing infrastructure, of course, but I think this council has actually done a good job in bulk water. And however, I think this council also has a very significant role in working with the territorial authorities and the system as a whole to make it work as a whole. And that's why I'm supporting this engagement document, even though I think we could actually run bulk water quite competently and happily into the future, subject to who might be on future councils. I think it is best integrated, done under a regional company model. So I'm going to support this out to public consultation.
Cool. Thank you, Councillor Duthie. Councillor Nash.
Kia ora, Chair. Thanks, everyone. And yeah, very much support the recommendations. I was going to say, it's very nice to see councils in the Wellington region working together collaboratively, putting together a joint proposal on a complex issue and having our act together. And I'm sure that everybody will notice that and congratulate us for doing that. And hopefully it bodes well for the future of other sorts of things that we can do. I was going to say the customer charter, I think it'd be good to have that more prominently referenced in the consultation document. I think it's not in the consultation document at the moment, but it is in the FAQ. So let's see if we can get that as an editorial change. I think that could end up being quite an important thing, that customer charter, that we'll look back on and be happy that we've got in there. And just a couple more things very briefly. One is on the cost. Lots of people have talked about how we're upfront in the FAQ about how this is going to cost people more, that any model for delivery of water services would cost people more, but this one will cost people less than it otherwise could. There might be other models that would have cost even less, but this is the one we've got. So I think we should be upfront about that in the consultation document. And lastly, just in terms of the FAQ, when I read it, so why is this happening so quickly? I feel like it hasn't actually happened that quickly. This is basically the outcome of a multi-year process that included the previous government's water reform, and was a huge national public debate. There are a lot of similarities between what is being proposed now and what was proposed under the previous government. I think we should be clear about that, and I'd like to see that as discussed in the consultation document and the FAQ, if possible. And otherwise, yeah, good. Let's go.
Okay. All right. If there's nobody else, thank you to the officers for the work on this. Ros, I know you've been particularly diligent in holding up our end as the regional council in the water committee, and in the work that you do in relation to this reform committee. It's sort of God's work, it feels like. No. Like Councillor Duthie, I think like most of you, really happy just to sort of get this off our plate into the community environment and get a sense of the reaction that we get to the two options. So good luck over the next while. We haven't really talked about how councillors will be engaged in that exercise, but we can have a set of offline conversations about that. All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. That's unanimous. That's unanimous. Let's take a break for morning tea. Thanks, councillors. Okay. This is item number 5, appointment of a member to the Regional Transport Committee. I don't think there's any need for debate on this paper. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this? Councillor Gaylor and Councillor Saw. All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no. Paper passed. Thank you. That was paper number 5. Yeah. Resolution to exclude the public. So the resolution relates to the land acquisition opportunity report, RPE 25.106, not the thing that you've got in your paper. So I have a mover in Councillor Gaylor and a seconder in Councillor Staples. All those in favour, please say aye. Those opposed, no.
Chair, we
Passed.
just need a moment to deal with the live streaming.
Just going to clear the hoi polloi, if there's any of you. That doesn't apply.